Mayor Kramer.
I'm here.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
Councilmember Mathen.
Present.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Knapp.
Here.
Councilmember Beckwith.
Here.
Councilmember Petzker.
Here.
Councilmember Hazelbaker is absent. Councilmember Hubs.
Here.
We heard from Councilman Hazelbaker, who's unable to attend, so we have a motion to excuse him.
Motion excused.
Support. Motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Randall's excused. We have a spot on our agenda now, and we have one at the end of the meeting for public comments. So if anyone would like to address the council, they may do so now or at the end of the meeting. Jim? And crew?
Well, usually I'm here in March talking about Walk a Mile, but we have a lot of exciting news going on in our agency right now. Within the last year, we have changed our name to Branch County Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. We always did the sexual violence prevention and work, but we actually added it to the name. In January, we were able to bring on a grant. We voted for a grant, and we brought on 4 full-time staff. 2 here. We have Suzanne Fish, we have Yolanda Lozano that are not here today, and then Sarah Johnson and Tina Patton, and they're all full-time working for sexual assault victim services in our community. So we were able to open up 4 new additional locations, not for shelter, but for services. So downtown Coldwater, 117 West Chicago, right next to Daly Tire. We are open for services there Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And we are also open in Quincy, Bronson, and Union City 1 day, full day a week, and then additional. We are actually 24 hours, always have been, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, but now we have people on call all that time. So going to the hospital, we've been to hospital calls, we can actually reach out to the community in a much broader sense without the limited staff that we've had before. So we're very excited to bring this to you and the education to our community. So with that, we want to share, if you want to hand out to if you don't mind, we have a handout kind of explaining the services that we offer, our expanded services, and this is really expanded and enhanced services is what we're trying to do. So now we have our old services that we always had, character education, domestic violence prevention, and there is a whole service list on the back page that allows that. We're continuing our 278 SAFE crisis line, resource line, which also allows for our whole community, because we don't have 211, we are using the 278 SAFE number for local resources. In this new grant, we wrote some dollars in to help support that. So we are able to actually add an additional 30,000 cards to go out to our community. So that is a resource to our whole community. So I'm really happy to do that because it was an expense before out of our fundraising dollars. So we'll be able to add that. We're also adding some financial assistance to some victims with that grant and some other additional things that we hope we can just keep growing and enhancing the services. One of the reasons for these additional locations is that sometimes people and victims feel very threatened by coming to the shelter house. They're making that final commitment that they are in this situation. And so now we feel maybe it'll be an ease into getting the help they need without actually coming to shelter. So we added also 12 more hours of additional counseling. So, and all of our services, as you know, are all free and confidential. So these ladies will be around. Tina will be at the Coldwater location. We hope you stop down. And we also added moved our chameleon. So to be in the same building, which is the resale store, and hoping that people, when they come in to shop, actually get more information and resources. We do also have our Walk a Mile coming up April 27th this year, and we hope that you all come out. I know at least one of you is fit in this shoe, and many of you have done that. We are going to be doing a new video this year, trying to expand to the other locations and to actually show where we are all. That we're all in one unit together, just trying to give more services to victims. So we hope that you'll support us and come on out again April 27th.
Thank you very much, Jim, for the update and for all you do for the community. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move into our consent agenda. These are items we consider to be routine. We take them in one motion unless someone in the audience or someone up here wants to remove for further discussion or clarification. Tonight we've got our minutes of February 11th, Library Advisory minutes of January 14, DDA minutes of November 28, Historical District Commission meeting of January 9, BPU minutes January 22, BPU financial reports for December, Power Agency minutes for December 10th and December 14th. Those are the items in our consent agenda. Would anyone in the audience like anything removed? Anybody up here? Motion to approve our consent agenda, please.
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Bills and accounts, $188,136. As always, detail on our website for anyone to look at. Questions for Tom or Jeff or Keith?
Just have one question. Why did we buy or get Microsoft Office?
I have no idea. I can find out. I saw the same thing and I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I know. I was just I was going through the thing. It's like that just doesn't seem.
And you know what? First of all, I'll double check that it actually meant to say that and didn't, that wasn't something that pasted in for someone else. I do know that, Pat goes through and re-quotes everything every year. So everything he's buying is, at the best price he can get it at.
But it just seemed that.
I'm gonna look into that.
If you get an answer, would you email council and let us know?
I can do that. Yeah.
Any other questions on the bill? Go on, Pam.
I'll move to pay our bills, Your Honor.
Support? We have a motion and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Bills are paid. Number 10, city manager report. Keith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council, good evening. A little bit shorter report this evening. But one item that we'd like to announce for the second time, it was unveiled last week at the DDA meeting, was the establishment of a low-interest loan pool fund that's been established through Southern Michigan Bank and Trust and Century Bank and Trust to the tune of $800,000 available for projects located downtown. And so we think that'll be another incentive and opportunity in which to help facilitate projects downtown. They will have to include some form of a facade component to their loan. And then we also announced the establishment of a facade reimbursement grant program for businesses and building owners downtown. Anyone interested in getting information about those programs can contact us here at the city. Audrey Tappenden is our Economic Development Assistant, and she can be reached here at City Hall. Secondly, the board review. There again is coming up in a couple weeks. The assessment notices went out today. Those, on average, across the community will equal about 2.4%, which is the inflationary rate established by the state this year. New home construction, I had mentioned to you a month or two back about a number of the new homes that have been started. These are 3 additional ones that weren't previously identified. I think we have about 8 homes in various stages of construction at this time, so that's just another example of the economic activity taking place in our community. Last call for MML. I do have Councilmember Hazelbaker will be attending, but if you'd like to attend, on Wednesday, March 20th, we'll be going up, so let me know if you'd like to attend. And then lastly, Mother-Son Night coming up, March 9th, Saturday, March 9th. Early registration ends this Friday, March 1st. Families can save $10 if they get in by that time. Otherwise, it goes up $10, and there again, it's only about 2 weeks away, so they're going to a fun opportunity for moms, aunts, grandmothers, and their sons or grandsons or nephews. So, with that, that's the extent of my report tonight.
Questions for Keith, anybody?
Can you explain a little bit about the incentives downtown? Have we been going door to door and advertised to business owners? And what's the facade requirement we're looking for them to do?
It just has to be work. It could be any type of exterior repair to the front of the building, paint, awning, windows, doors, physical repairs to the brick or facades. A percentage of that has to be incorporated into their loan if they were looking for a loan, or could be strictly the grant itself. So we have a new marketing piece, which was just unveiled last week, so that's going out. Audrey is making contact with all the property owners. Tim is using it as he's making contact with business and property owners as part of the recruitment process. It'll be available on the city's website. It'll be pushed out through Facebook. But there is, we have everything from now. We have a revolving loan fund, which we've historically had. We have the facade grant. We have the loan pool. We have historic tax credits. So there are a number of incentives. We have our own building. Once that's, the DDA also approved some asbestos abatement. Once that's removed, we can more actively look to renovate or lease that space. And so once that building is available, we can use either low or reduced or exempted lease payments to get a startup, and we can talk about that afterwards too. But so those are the list of incentives which are identified on that new marketing piece, and now it's a matter of putting it out and getting in front of the public.
Any questions for Keith? Would like a motion to approve the city manager report, I believe.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Jeff. You have support in the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 11, memo from Jeff Buck regarding proposed electric rate adjustments. Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council. I want to start off just by running through a quick presentation. I think I've sent you all some preliminary information. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. This one, the easiest rate increase we'll have to do, since we're really not raising rates, it's really just an allocation of the costs that make up our rates. As you know, the BPU as well as the City Council has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're allocating costs correctly. We have no profit motive. Ours is just making sure that we're recovering our charges correctly, and that makes sure those charges are not being cross-subsidized across the various rate classes. One of the issues that we have is, obviously electric rates or any rates is never fair to everybody. So again, as we go through this, I hope we answer all your questions you have. So first of all, I just want to give you a little back history. Back in May of 2018, we did have our rate consultant, which is Mark Beauchamp with Utility Financial Solutions. He came back and looked at our cost of service study, which basically is the backbone for how we establish our rates. He basically said that we're exceeding our financial targets. We have a strong cash position. Not to read this to you, but you can kind of see we're doing quite well financially. One of the things that he did, however, say is that we need to make sure that we're charging adequately between ourselves, which is between the fixed charges and the variable charges. If you follow my cursor, down here, he's really, this column here is what he figured the cost of service. By looking at our cost and then looking at our revenues, he can say, hey, here's what we feel. There's some fixed charges here. Street lights is kind of out. It's kind of an outlier, so kind of ignore that column. But you kind of see some of the areas that need some adjustments between the two areas. So one of the things that we're going to look at doing is moving to cost of service, which means that our fixed charges are getting paid for by recovering for the fixed charge that's on your bill. When I say fixed charge, there's a base fee, a readiness and service charge that is on the bill itself. Make sure that that charge is kind of offsetting those actual fixed charges we have, such as debt, such as the meters, and those types of things. The volumetric charge or the basis of which you use electricity is the actual energy charge. So this would be for all the things that, our poles and wires. We have to have them whether you use 0 kilowatt hours or 1,000 kilowatt hours. So obviously they had some recommendations. One was a revenue neutral rate adjustment, which is what we're going to be looking at. Again, increasing the fixed charge and decreasing the energy charge. He did have some adjustments for some high load factors, again, making sure that they're not being overly charged for anything that needs to be adjusted for people who actually use a lot of power. So there's only 2 customers that impacts. He also recommended an adjustment to the power cost adjustment. I'm going to touch base on that in another slide. And he also has a 3-year phase and approach where he's looking at. The power cost adjustment, I know if you attended the meeting back in May of 2018, we had this really complex how we're going to factor the power cost adjustment, how we're going to add it to the bill, but then give a credit back. We actually didn't, purposely kind of delayed it a little bit, which actually worked out pretty well in our favor because our power supply costs, which come from Michigan South Central Power Agency, have actually decreased. And I'll show you that in a couple more slides. We also, at the board level at the agency, have agreed to have adopted a policy where we can equalize the payments throughout the year. So that will eliminate some of the power cost adjustments that are, especially our industrial customers have seen, where all of a sudden their power costs can be impacted greatly, it can fluctuate month to month. So this would be more of a smoothing method across all 12 months. And again, I think I covered those. So I know this is hard to read, but you kind of see that that red line that goes straight across right at 0.06, that stands for 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Basically what that is our base fee. So anytime costs rise above that horizontal red line, you can kind of see that is a time when our costs, we have to charge more, get those costs back from our customers. As you look at the top green line, 16 and 17, which is what our cost of service was adjusted for, those costs were significantly higher. And that's why Utility Financial Solutions had said, hey, we need to add or increase our power cost adjustment, our base value that is baked into our rates, by taking that to 7 cents a kilowatt hour. What has happened though is that I guess what you call the lowest line is our power cost projections for the next fiscal year, actually for a calendar year, are actually went below that. So what we decided to do is, hey, let's put that increase back on hold. Let's see how the rate stabilization policy works at the agency level, so we don't have to charge anybody any additional costs. We're going to try to equalize that. One of the things that we talked about here, again, if you look at the reports, if you follow my cursor, this is really what it's calculating at, is what we really should be charging. We should be charging 17 cents a month for our actual fixed charges. Right now, whoops, I just went up the slide. Right now we're $8.75, so we're only about half of where we should be charging in terms of our costs. And that is true across all the rate classes, and we'll cover this a little bit more later. But basically, he says that the fixed charges should be about 50% of the cost of recovery, and we're not there. We're almost a quarter of where we really should be in terms of our fixed charges. So this kind of goes the same thing. If you read the slide, our current charge is $8.75. It really should be closer to $16.81, and it goes on the same for all of our rate charges. That we really need to focus and get those rates allocated correctly. Another reason why this is important is as things change in the future regarding solar, regarding wind, regarding electric vehicles, you want to make sure that you're capturing all those costs. Because if everybody went to solar all of a sudden, and we didn't have our rates corrected, we'd have all these lines and not getting the right amount of money being transferred across those lines. I know that's a little more technical, but I go in further depth if you like. So here basically he's trying to say, hey, we don't have any, he's not trying to show any rate increases. This is kind of where he says that, hey, we want to make sure that our revenue and costs basically are netting out to zero. So this is a real quick snapshot. This is a comparison to consumers' energy. And I tried to do this to show you the actual bill. So in this column here, if you follow my cursor, is our existing. So we're charging $8.75 now. We're proposing to be increased for $2. Now this is, I just used a January bill, and this person used 840 kilowatt hours. So this would have been an energy charge of $83.75. Well, we're looking to go up $2 on the fixed charge, but also dropping it down the equivalent of $2 on the energy charge. Our power cost adjustment, so you can kind of see this person's fully electric bill was $101, and under any proposed rates, it's actually going to be $100.57. I'm going to show you a little bit of reason why. Our average customer uses 600 kilowatt hours per month, okay? So if you use exactly our average, and I'll show you a slide that'll show this, it would be a zero increase. If you use less than 600 kilowatt hours, you will actually pay more. If you can't say that word together, if you use more than 600, your bill will actually go down. So there's a little bit of I would say winners and losers, that's not the right word, but again, certain people that'll pay a significant decrease, some people have a small increase on their bill. So if you look at it, one thing I did want to point out though, so this is that actual consumer's bill, and that's what's in this column here. Now, consumers has a significantly more line item charges. They have like 13 line items compared to our 4. So a lot of that, to be fair, their rates are charged a lot differently. They have shareholders, they're also trying to make a profit, where we don't have that motive. So they have a lot more regulations and what they have to, how they have to show things on the bill. So, but again, the biggest thing to look at is what we're looking at doing is trying to make sure that when people start comparing their kilowatt hour charge, and this is what they want to say, hey, what kilowatt hour are you charging? Well, if you look at ours, we're technically higher on a per kilowatt hour basis, and this is the proposed rate compared to what they're charging at these two rates. So, but what we need to do is make sure that our rates are comparable. So again, this is another reason why you want to make sure that that allocation is going back and forth. One of the things, I'm going to switch here to a different slide real quick. Oops. So in his electric rate design, basically showing what he wants to do for the next 3 years for his phase and approach. As you can see, he's taking his fixed charges of $8.75 up to $14.75 within 3 years. The same way with the energy charge, these items would be going up. Sorry, that keeps popping up. So our energy charge is actually going to be going down. So they kind of are inverse of each other. That is really it in a nutshell. If you look down here at the bottom screen, this is really a graphical representation. So if 600 is our average customer, everybody that's on this side of 600, 600 and less, will be paying slightly more for the bill. Everybody on this side will be paying slightly less for the bill. But again, that is basically the essence of this whole presentation, is that we're going to be increasing the fixed charges, but decreasing the energy charges. The same would be true, again, we'll go down to each individual rate, but it doesn't change on the D rate, which is kind of like either a very heavy or residential user, or usually it's a new construction rate. Again, it has an increase of the fixed charge with a decreasing volume metric charge, which is on the energy side. If we go down even for the C rates, again, you'll see the exact same things. It's going to go up $5 a month, so every rate class is a little bit different in how we're trying to structure those increases. But in all cases, you'll also see a corresponding decrease in the energy charge. Now, every rate higher than C and above has a demand charge. That's the demand charge of how big you got to take your wires, how big you got to make sure your transformers are. So there's a little different calculation on that for the demand charges for your higher rates. But again, even those rates, they actually went up to, again, this is more of a fixed cost recovery, so we're recovering more of our fixed charges, but again, offsetting it by the electric charge. I hope this makes a little better example, so I'm going to kind of tie this one together. As I talked about, the average customer is 600 kilowatt hours. Our current rate is 9.97 cents per kilowatt hour. Get it off there. And we're looking at proposing it going to 9.63 cents per kilowatt hour. Our current base is $8.75, going $2 increase to $10.75. So here is where, if you take the 600 kilowatt hours, which is our average, times 12, you would see that there's basically a zero, though this is rounding, about how you get to a zero increase. This is our current bill compared to the proposed bill, that'd be 48 cents. This is my bill. Now again, it's the Arctic, usually in my house, because my wife doesn't like heat, so we keep it pretty cold at my house. But you can see I will get a $13 annual savings because I use more than that 600 kilowatt hour increase. But my net bill really is basically trying to be zero. These are two bills from two council members that are out here tonight. You see somebody's bill is going to go up $8.80, and others going to go down 15. And then this is just another random person I chose who is a single person. Their bill will go up 15. Worst case scenario would be that you use zero power for the year. Your bill would go up $24 a year. Now that will be the same thing, because I will be in front of you again next year and the year after that. I'll be asking for that same increases over the next couple of years. And again, it's just so that we can get our fixed costs allocated back to where they should be and our energy charges down, so we can be more competitive. So we pay, what's your energy price? We can then be comparable to consumers or anything of that nature. So it just kind of shows different.
But Jeff, those future requests were just for the $2 per fixed cost, correct?
And a decrease, corresponding
Continue to go down
decrease,
to
yeah.
99, 96 and further down.
And, right, just add it up, we go back to that screen just to kind of show you.
Yeah, I think you explained, one of them, the fixed rate goes up while the kilowatt per hour goes down.
This is the easiest one to look at, so I'm just going to show you the residential, because this is one everybody wants to know about. I mean, the industrial customers want to look at the other slides. But here's where it goes up to from 8 to 14.75 over time. And then your energy charge goes from $9.97 down to $89.25. Now, this assumes that power supply costs stay relatively low, and that there's not an increase from the agency in our costs, or that our rate stabilization fund, something doesn't happen, and there's a cap and trade, there's all kinds of different things that can happen in power supply costs that could change that. I gave that kind of as a high level. I know a lot of people came to the BPU meeting last May and heard a very in-depth, like an hour and a half. I can go deeper if you like, but I don't want to pour anybody to tears. It's kind of straightforward, and I did make this a lot easier while taking the power supply cost projections out of those. And this is where I'll just show that too. So if you look at where, I guess you can't see that either kind. If you look at where right now for 2016, I know what this number is, but it says 0.6171. That's what we're projected for the 2019 calendar year to have our power supply comes in at, which originally when we were looking at the report, it was closer to that 7 cents, 7+ cents per kilowatt hour. So with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions you have or get more detail.
Ballpark, Jeff, what's our top 10% user and bottom 10% user if the average is 840 kilowatt hours?
The average is 600. So, there's very few people who use zero. I mean, that 600 is, this the majority of them use around that same thing. I feel like I'm a big user, and I think I'm at 1082. So, comparatively, so.
600.
Yeah, and one of the things that you always got to look at is this. I like to show this one. If you look at what you really, now this is for the whole year. What you pay for your electric bill for the whole year really is one of your smaller utility bills. If you look at even this consumer's bill, well, let's go with this one. This is a monthly bill, so people always look at their bill, and sometimes their cable bill and their your cell phone bill is much higher than their electric usage. These are the things that people, I think, really need to know. How you use power is changing. What's going to happen with electric vehicles in the future is going to be changing. Again, probably in the next 10 years, the electric industry as a whole will be changing dramatically. A lot of people need electricity for their day-to-day lives. They didn't used to be, and now it's kind of a luxury. So everybody needs a cell phone now. Everybody needs a charge. I don't know if that answered your question.
No.
There's really not a good thing. I can tell you.
I got you.
Yeah, there's not a good answer to that.
As if somebody had a vacant house, how many kilowatts an hour about to power up?
If it's vacant,
Vacant, but they've got the
lights on,
refrigerator on it, sitting vacant or whatever.
I'd say
100.
80 to 100 kilowatt hour. It's not. Some would be 30. I saw somebody had nothing but a couple of space heaters on. It was about 30, 35.
Hydroponic grow.
Yeah. Well, that might charge a little more for that. So.
Questions for Jeff? And I imagine the pilot's included in your fixed costs.
That's correct. Yeah. And that doesn't impact any of this at all.
The only question I have, it seems like we've addressed this fixed cost issue multiple times over the last, so did the consultants 10 years ago not? Why is it, this is not the first time EPU has come to us to adjust the fixed cost. And I understand the logic, I think myself, I did a good job explaining it, but why wasn't this addressed 5, 10, 15 years ago?
It's always one of those things we never go far enough. For a lot of years we didn't even change rates. I think in 2017 was the first time we changed rates in a significant amount of time. I'd have to go back and look at that number, but I think it's been 3 or 4 years. And things are changing. Pricing changes, because now the fixed charges are what the fixed charges are, and I think the power supply costs when they change, it's kind of a moving target. So it's not one of those things you can say, and again, it's not an exact science that, hey, this is exactly what those numbers should be because of fixed. As you can see here, if I really want to do it the right way, we really should be going to that $16 right now, because that's really what should be done. But nobody wants to do that because it's politically incorrect, as well as it also hurts the consumers. So, but I know it's not a good answer.
Other questions for Jeff? Jeff is looking for a decision on whether to adopt or not adopt Resolution 1950. It's your pleasure, folks.
Motion to adopt Resolution 1915.
Support.
Okay, we have motion and support. Any final questions? Comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Number 12, a letter from Keith Baker regarding the Act 51 annual millage report.
Mileage. So,
Mileage,
thank you, Your Honor.
Mileage.
This is an annual report. It's required as part of our funding through the state of Michigan and federal road funds. It's something that we submit on an annual basis. There were 2 changes this year to note. One was the removal of the old US 12 bridge. So that 65 feet we will no longer get credit for as to our calculation for road mileage. And through some form of oversight, the what used to be Michigan Road and extended north of Jonesville, which no longer exists, continued to be on our maps, and so we removed that and trying to bring that into correction. So we're just seeking approval of Resolution 1912 as presented.
Move to approve Resolution 1912.
We have motion, we have support. Any questions? Not. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 12, a memo from Keith regarding first budget amendments for fiscal year 18-19. Keith?
Thank you, Your Honor. What you have before you is a list of revenue amendments and a list of expenditure amendments to the current fiscal year budget in a number of funds. The resulting change is approximately $30,000 or $35,000 in a reduction of the projected deficit that was approved at the beginning of the fiscal year last July. So this is our first round of 2 amendments that you'll see, the second of which will come in April or May to more closely align the budget with final numbers. And I want to give credit to Tom for having prepared it and all of the numbers behind it. So if you have any questions, I'll probably defer to him.
Questions? Going in a good direction, but
Trying to true up numbers as we go through the fiscal year.
if there are no questions, I think you would like a motion to approve these budget amendments.
Correct.
Yeah, we approve our budget amendments for fiscal year 18-19.
Support.
Motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 14, a letter from Keith regarding Chandler parking lot landscape.
So hopefully the end is in sight. There's a light at the end of the tunnel on Chandler parking lot, that being the landscaping of this spring. We put it out to bid. We received 4 bids. We did receive the lowest bid being from a nearby contractor, and coming in below the engineer's estimate in the amount of $23,552.92 from Backyard Creations of Bronson. And so we're looking to approve that bid to proceed this spring for the completion of the Chandler parking lot.
Have we used them before, Keith?
We have not, or at least not recently, but we did check references. The city of Bronson, Clemens, they had another reference that we checked, and they have a good local reputation.
Why was such a disparity between the lowest bid and the rest of them?
And it's not, if you look through the bid, it's not one individual item. I think labor is less, and for them, they've identified labor is less. Some of their per unit pricing on the materials is less. But thankfully that came in under versus the double or triple what the others were. And they're close. They're more physically closer to us than at least 2 of the other bidders. The difference is cumulative through all those different line items.
What did you do about the second bid by Backyard Creation? It would not agree to the terms of the warranty. Did that get corrected, or?
Yes, there is an attached memo from our designer. They have agreed, so the contract will actually include that.
They did agree to that?
Yes.
Okay.
So they're going to
was an oversight.
also warranty on the plants.
Right, the 1-year warranty on the plants.
They would look for a bid bid to approve the landscaping bid to the backyard creation.
I'll make the motion.
Support.
Motion I support. Any questions? Not. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Landscaping's done. Number 15, a letter from Megan regarding updating investment policy. Megan?
Sure, so as explained in the letter, we have an investment policy, which we're required to have, and it targets, the Public Act out of which it arises, targets certain relatively conservative types of investments that public corporations like the city are allowed to invest their, shall we say, spare, currently unused cash assets in. And in reviewing that, the one that we passed in 1998, it was seeming pretty dated in terms of its language. It didn't explain the types of investments in terms that we have come to know them, are more familiar with. And the treasurer believed that it was would be advantageous for us to send out the policy anew with a new acknowledgement form, which is also updated, and have all of the institutions that hold this type of cash asset for us acknowledge anew that they will comply with the terms of the policy and the law. So that's really, it's really just a refreshing of what we had in place and what we're required to have in place. Tom is here if you have any questions.
Questions for Megan or Tom? They're looking for us to either adopt or not adopt Resolution 1913. So we'll support adopt, I assume. John, any questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Number 16, letter from Megan regarding updating local election law. Megan?
This one is a little bit more complicated. There's a state statute that allows us to change our election law, certainly with respect to this type of filing deadline, to comply with the state law by resolution, even though it was originally set in charter and also in the ordinances. And of course, if you pass the resolution, which would bring us into alignment with the state law, which is that nominating petitions must be filed the 15th Tuesday before a primary election, rather than what we currently have, which I believe is the 12th Tuesday before. We have to do this. We're allowed to do it by resolution, and if you pass that resolution tonight, we will be square and ready for the deadline, which is actually April 23rd this year. But we also have an ordinance published in our book of ordinances that is an explanation and a set of deadlines for, I guess, would be candidates, really. Primarily, they're the folks who go and look at our ordinances about this. And our ordinance is further out of date than our law is, because before we used the resolution process to update our deadline, and we're going to use that again tonight if you pass that resolution. But I wanted the ordinance book to look right. I wanted it to be in compliance with the state law and what we embodied in the resolution. So I'm also asking that you introduce the ordinance, which obviously as an ordinance we can't pass it tonight. And the other thing that that ordinance would do would be to make it clear that where we only have 2 candidates at the time of the primary nomination petition deadline, we don't have to have a primary, which is surprising, and that also goes along with state election law. So those are the 2 changes in the ordinance, and I'm asking you to consider and perhaps pass the resolution, which you should do, because that brings us into compliance with state law, and then consider introduction of the ordinance.
Jeff's explanation, that's very clear, so thank you.
I'm not sure. Do the best you can.
I think that makes sense. So everybody on board with that, understand? Everything's just getting us in compliance with what we need to do.
Not radical.
So Megan's asking this, we adopt resolution 1914 and introduce ordinance 819.
Where's the part where it was the 2? Can you
The last paragraph there. So it says if we have fewer than 2
Yeah,
candidates.
that's what, she said 2 candidates, but it's, actually, I read it last night, it's fewer than 2, so if one person's running for a ward, we don't have to have an election, correct?
Primary.
This is, we're all looking at primaries right now. And if we have,
This is fewer than
right, if we have 2 people, we don't have to have a primary. We can have an election, correct? Correct. We can wait and have our election at the time of the general election in November.
I see what you're saying, Jim, because I read the same way that if we have fewer than 2, we do not hold a primary election. Fewer than 2 is 1. Right. You're saying it's fewer than 2 is 1.
Yeah, I read it last night, and the way I took it was there was only one person running for the position, because it says fewer than 2 candidates, which is one or none.
Okay, so it should
Two-
say, in the
two or
letter, it
fewer.
should say 2 or
Or
fewer
fewer,
candidates.
yeah.
Let's look at the ordinance itself. Can you scroll down and look at what the, it's the first section of the, in the body, down. Down. Okay, so,
Right here. So the ballot petitions for more than 2 candidates.
if valid petitions for no more than 2 candidates for an office to be filled at the following regular city election have been filed, then no primary election is necessary.
So it's just the wording in the letter that needs to be changed.
Well, the wording of the letter was unclear. Consent to that.
Well, I just.
Are we okay with the ordinance? That's really the important part.
Right.
Good catch, Jim.
Just take 2 motions
Yes, please, the resolution,
and.
and then
We
introduce.
look for a motion to either adopt or not adopt resolution 1940.
So moved, John.
Support. Motion made and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Now we're looking for a motion to introduce ordinance 819.
So move your support.
We have a motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Megan. Number 17, a presentation of the 2018 Annual Fire Department Report by David Schmaltz. David?
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you this evening to talk a little bit about 2018 in the fire department. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to review the full report. What I thought tonight I would do is just kind of pull out some of the highlights, give you an opportunity to ask a few questions, and then get us moving on to our next thing we're going to do here tonight. So with that, the next slide, the first slide I'd like to kind of talk about is what our total responses are. That's usually one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, you know, how many calls do you run per year? And what I try to do is I try to give us a good average over at least 5 years to see where we're at, to see what kind of a pattern we're establishing. If you can see there in 2018, we ran 1,440 calls, which is actually a 28% increase in the last 5 years. Now that again, that is EMS, fire, rescue, that's everything all encompassed into one. So the next slide that we're going to look at real quick is just our fire responses. And what I wanted to do in this slide is actually spread it out more than 5 years. I took it out about 15 years, just to try to show us a pattern of what I like to always tell people is that in our business, it's not linear, it's very cyclical. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, so on and so forth. And surprisingly, our graph kind of goes against some of the norms and the fact that when we actually have an economic depression, that's usually when we see fires actually increase. But if you look back here in 2008, we actually had a significant decrease, which I found to be very interesting when I did this. So, you know, traditionally and historically throughout the United States, fires are actually on the decrease, but you know, we're still staying above the 50 mark. You know, we try to combat that with prevention and other activities. So the next biggest thing that we do actually respond to is going to be our EMS responses. And as you can see here, again, continually to increase over the last 5 years, 24% overall. This is not unusual. This is what we've been projecting at least for the last 10 to 15 years with the baby boomers reaching the retirement age. The population is getting older, people are living longer, we're starting to see more calls for EMS, and I do not anticipate this number going down. I actually anticipate it to continually to increase. The next question that gets asked a lot is, what's our response times? How long does it take to get to where we need to go? So I broke that out into the 3 areas that we cover, the city of Coldwater, Coldwater Township, and Girard Township. But tonight I'm just going to really focus in on the city. And what we show here is a response time of 4 minutes. So what that's telling us is that from the time we receive the call within the station, we're arriving on scene within 4 minutes, which is meeting the NFPA national standard of NFPA 1710. I actually think we're faster than that. So I took the average over 5 years. The reason being is if you look at 2016, we have a significant increase. And what I actually asked and kind of pulled some of the guys at the department, the consensus was, I believe that was when we were probably working on Grant Street or Marshall and doing a bunch of repaving, which would have required us to kind of go out of our way to respond there. So truthfully, I think our response times are probably somewhere in the 340 to 350 range, which is actually pretty outstanding when you think about what we have to get through in the traffic. So very, very proud of what we do there. And we drive safe and make sure we don't get into any accidents. The next slide I threw in here, one of those anomalies that inevitably somebody will always ask me is what day of the week or the time of the day or when are you're most busy. And when you play with the graph, I can extend it upwards and downwards. I can really make it look like there's a significant increase in one or the other. So I try to hit home that just because of what you're seeing isn't something that we can necessarily base staffing on. But as you would expect, Friday is our busiest and Sundays are our slowest in actuality. But again, that's a 5-year period that we're looking at. So then I even try to break it down farther. What's our response times during the day? See what kind of pattern we have there. And as I said before, anything you can do to a graph, you can make it look at the way you want to. But what I found very interesting about here in Coldwater is that our busiest times are from 1 in the afternoon to 5 in the afternoon, where you would normally think it would be either very early in the morning or later in the afternoon. But there's really not a gigantic separation in the majority of it, except for right around 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning is where we see with this graph. Moving on to the next segment of the business is our training activities. And in training, what we try to do is we try to meet national objectives. So hopefully everybody's familiar with ISO, the Insurance Service Office, which sets the insurance rates, or actually sets our fire protection rating from 1 to 10, and we are actually a 3. And in that component, there's a training section. And what that requires us to do is per firefighter, we need to hit 192 hours of just firefighting training annually per each individual. And we hit about 163 last year, which isn't bad. It's pretty good. What this graph doesn't reflect, though, is the additional trainings that we do as far as hazmat, technical rescue, and then if somebody is an officer, they have to get an additional 12 hours a year of supervisory training or leadership type of training. And then if you drive an apparatus, that's another 12 hours you have to complete on top of the 192 that we try to require. So 163 is pretty good. We do struggle with trying to make sure that the park aides are going to be able to get in there and get as much training as we can. So what we've done is we're starting to move towards some more online stuff that they can actually do at home and take care of, and then more practical stuff when they come into the station and when they're doing their station time. The Prevention and Inspection Bureau, this is a division kind of its own within my department, and it's pretty much staffed by one man, the fire marshal. And I've highlighted in 2018 for the inspections, we only did 35 inspections for the year, and that was simply because Paul Dove retired in April, and we didn't promote Steve Trawl until October for that position. So that's the only reason why we completed the 35 inspections. But I fully anticipate we're going to be back well above the 250 this year, and then thankfully investigations are down, and then our public relations events hopefully are going to still increase as we go along with Steve being in that position. And then the smoke alarm installs and the carbon monoxide installs, I think they've reduced a little bit simply because we've been able to hit so many homes in the past. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk about is what we're hoping to accomplish coming up here in the next year. Community risk reduction. We want to work collectively with public and private partners to solve some of the problems. And what I mean there is allowing the fire marshal to work collectively with the building department and things, and work with codes and business owners and trying to help recruit, bring new people in, and really have that active participation to show that we're part of a solution and not so much a problem. And I also want to keep pushing towards trying to get that ISO rating, maybe more closer to a 2. If we can get it to a 2, not only will the businesses but the residents of the community will actually see another reduction in their insurance rates. It's going to take some work, and we're going to definitely give it a good shot. I can't guarantee it, but with the training we're looking at, and then some other things that we're trying to accomplish that was a little lacking in the report, we're going to work towards that. The training, I'd like to try to bring in 1 or 2 outside classes. It certainly helps to have an outside instructor to bring in some new ideas. We just had somebody come in this past week that taught forcible entry with a training prop. Outstanding training. Sent a few people off some off-site trainings. Training on the low frequency to high risk events. That's going to be like our confined space, our high angle stuff. We don't have that very often, but when we do, it's a very technical skill. It's something we need to be up on. And then all of our career personnel, we're going to get them certified at the officer level. That'll help us comply with the MyOcean Part 74 requirement that says that anybody that is going to be riding in what we call the right seat of the apparatus or taking command at the scene needs to have that officer certification. So through the county training coordinator, through the state fireworks money, we're able to put on that class at no cost to any of the municipalities here in Branch County. In emergency responses, what I want to do is we're working real hard on trying to strengthen our mutual aid partnerships through training and responses with Bronson, Quincy, Lakeland, and the surrounding departments. We've actually taken it a step at the county chief's level. We've all agreed to start working off the same policies and procedures, starting to do some training together, and using us more so far as a preemptive type of a response. So more of an automatic aid, not necessarily a mutual aid. And by going with the standard operating procedures, that actually will equate to some points for us within the ISO grading scale. Hope you got our pay staff back up to 9. We're currently at 8. I got a feeling I'm going to lose another one to some medical stuff. So sometime in the spring, I'll be putting on another ad to try to recruit 1 or 2 more part pays, and then hopefully replace our grass rate the next year or 2 to get rid of the 1985 PNR pickup truck that we're currently using. So other than that, that's kind of my report. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present this. I guess in closing, I guess I'd like to just say that, in my 25 years of being in the fire service, working in 4 departments, this being my second go around here, you should be very, very pleased with the quality of individuals that work in this organization, the dedication they do, the things that they go above and beyond. You don't have to ask to have things done. It's not unusual for me to walk out into the bay to see these guys working on things that you wouldn't expect. And then to watch them operate at a scene, you're getting some of the best care you can that I've seen in all the places that I've been. So with that, I will open up to any questions.
Questions, Chief?
How long does it take to train a park pay?
Well, it depends on if they have the fire certifications or not. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of pushing it off to the end, because the fire academy doesn't start until October.
Where's that?
We actually hold it here in Branch County. Lieutenant Lance Johnson, our department, is the county training coordinator, and he actually runs that. And it'll take probably, because they don't meet every day, it's twice a week for a couple hours, and then on a weekend. It'll take a good 4 to 5 months to get them up to the firefighter 2 training that they need to be.
Question?
Truck 8, the brush truck, that's what we talked about replacing before, but we didn't get the other communities to kick in with it.
Yeah, I've actually put an application back into the DNR to see if we can get a replacement for that. But that could take up to a year to obtain that type of a vehicle. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now.
How much do we use that? When's the last time we used that?
The last time we used it, it's been a while. Honestly, the stats show that we ran about 12 grass fires.
So once a month, if you want to average it out, it's about
Yeah,
once a
so it
month.
is used. It's
Yeah.
used. Yeah, we'll use it for utility things, you know, we have to do some errands, or we take that out to the fire scenes if we have to bring back in some equipment. If we were to get a new one of my thoughts would be that we equip it with a phone system. So when we're doing some overhaul, or if the fire marshal's doing some investigation, we still have a capability to put out spot fires, but get big equipment back into the station and out of the elements.
Even if we were able to get a more recent used DNR vehicle, it would still take some funds in which to equip it.
Question for Chief?
I don't have a question, but I want to say thank you very much, because I agree with your assessment, the professionalism of your staff, at least in my personal case, was outstanding. Quality of care and how professional the individuals in my house were when my wife had her issue was outstanding. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Chief, just curious, with your EMS calls, narcotics related, what's been your experience with that issue?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Mayor. When I was looking at the statistics on that,